Hi, it's Jane from the Compassion Project, and I am here today with Danielle Dionne from Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. And I am honored that she's here. We connected through the Compassion Project, and yeah, super excited. So, this woman is incredible. She is heart driven and determined to make a difference in the world. She has two adult children, a son 28 and a daughter 23, and they are the loves of her life. And she's passionate, energetic, and absolutely loves what she does. She's a parent management training specialist coach and is also a qualified mediator and has her own family mediation practice called Family Ship. I'm really excited to learn more about that. I think it's incredible. Her mission is to reduce conflict in the lives of children. And recently, Danielle joined Peace360 Initiatives and is honored to serve as the director of mental health program. I haven't even heard of that, so I'm just super excited you're here. I think right now during this pandemic and what's happening, such an important time to try and have peace in our lives and family. So welcome.
Thank you, Jane. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Yeah, so I'm just so curious to kind of hear a bit of your story and where your passion came from and your drive to, we always have that inner when you're making a difference. Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you for asking. I don't know if passion can be a blessing and a curse sometimes. It definitely, people say you work too much or you too much energy. So I'm trying to pace that and sleep more. But I can definitely say I wake up 24/7 all day, every day. And I'm really, really into the whole idea of reducing conflict in the lives of the children. So where did the passion start? I would say when I started working with families in an elementary school that were refugees, that was kind of my first introduction to going, hey, parenting is different in different places. And what's different with some of these children that are coming here that have come from countries that were just in war? So some of these kids were very resilient, while others I noticed were not. I mean, it was obvious. Some weren't able to learn English quickly. They'd bolt out of the school. Security was a really big factor. It became more of a social environment to create safety. It was very trauma-informed workplace. And yet some of the kids bounce, you'd hear their stories, you'd be like, there's no possible way this little being could come from where they come from and be eager to learn in this way. What's different? So I started really getting fascinated by this. And then I recognized on the playground, wow, we have kids from all over the world playing together. They're not fighting. Yet the parents on the sideline were judging whether they should play together. So I realized, hey, hold on. The parents are really influencing everything. So I got more interested when I started looking at situations of child abuse where parents would different forms of discipline from different parts of the world. And of course, you have an obligation to report these things. And at first, that was your first instinct. And started realizing, hold on, if we work with these parents and start talking about Canadian values and start showing compassion to them instead of throwing them into the system or, still having to do the job you're obliged to do, but at the same time, compassion and recognizing that these families are they're here for asylum. They're here for refuge and shelter and safety and security. And our faces on the front line have such an awesome opportunity to create spaces for people to be safe again. And so that included these parents whom I grew relationships with. My own story, I was brought up in a home that had a very loving mom. I mean, she still is the most fantastic woman ever. Very healthy, very fit, very kind, super compassionate, hardworking, responsible, reliable, fierce woman.
Aww.
And I had a father who struggled with abuse in the churches. So he was violently abused, and ended up, when my family separated, ended up on the street. So he was unhoused for his whole life. He passed away about 5 years ago. We think of a drug overdose, probably fentanyl, on the
Oh,
street pretty
wow.
much. So yeah, so that was, living with a father who was unhoused, who was extremely abusive and violent with me, with our community, with, and getting to a point where I wanted to face him. So there was almost a restorative process I went through with him.
Yeah, I
And,
can see that.
so there was a lot of compassion and going, hey, people say, oh, that's your dad. He did these things to you. He should go to jail. And I'm like, but he's my dad. So working with the parents, working with what I was going through growing up, being a young mom, parenting became kind of the thing for me. So I went back to school after working in the elementary school, and I did a degree in law and justice. And my focus during that degree was looking at the philosophy of discipline and punishment. And so I was really fascinated with this idea. Hey, what's the difference of those things? And is it that punishment, the way that we punish or try to teach kids, what's happening with us? Can we help? And so I started learning about, philosophers and what was going on with the changes in parenting. And I really, really got fascinated and studied. And then I started thinking, hey, you know what? Trauma, in my own experience of going through therapy for years, you could name it. I've been diagnosed with major depressive disorder, chronic post-traumatic stress syndrome, generalized anxiety disorder, all of these diagnoses, and gone through many medications. And it wasn't until I realized that, hey, all of this is trauma. And how do I reconcile this? And what is the system promoting me to do? How is the doctors helping me? How is this? And I started realizing, yeah, you know what? There's one thing with having a diagnosis, and there's another thing with being liberated and actually standing up, speaking up, and doing the work. And that liberation is the healing that I found. And that's what's brought me to the work of Familyship, that I realized that if we can help family homes solve problems in a way that encourages peace, then even if we can just help one child have a life that with their families intact, keeping families together, working out problems together in a procedural, patient and kind yet firm way,
Yeah.
then that felt like my calling. So that's where Familyship began. I went and got a mediation certification, and I started looking at different peace languages, nonviolent communication with Marshall Rosenberg. I've been really studying that in the last year, and different ways of communicating and supporting parents to teach communication and supporting couples to do the same. So that is really about communication, and that's where that comes from.
That's honestly, that's incredible. And because families are so complicated, and we become parents, and we have the tools that we had when we were little, what we grew up with, and then we become parents, and we haven't really learned how, like you say, to handle conflict, and there's stress, and there's this, and what do you follow or know Dr. Joe Dispenza or Dr. Bruce Lipton? Do you know them?
Lipton, I do, yes.
I think they're incredible. They literally changed or helped me heal my brain, and it wasn't until I started listening to them that I realized the power of the third stage of pregnancy, that third trimester when you're carrying a baby to 7 years old, the brain development and what they hear in their environment. And it's all like programming into their subconscious mind. So these little people are in their environment, and if it's very violent or their brains are actually comfortable and creating these, like, it blew my mind when I thought the importance of those early years that these children, right? And and normally we don't really remember much when we're 4 or 5, but you've been programmed, and so then you become an adult and things happen and you react because your brain is already programmed, right?
Those neural pathways begin in pregnancy, and we create conflict habits and also feedback from our environment that creates new behavior, new reactions and responses. And it's important in those times that we care about how the environment impacts early life and our early brain development.
Yeah.
And we have such an opportunity to create spaces and environments that build neural pathways that are peaceful and kind and also firm and boundary. I say peace is not passive, right? I think it's
Right.
important that we encourage assertiveness and at the same time find the sweet spot where there is mutual respect. And in that early life, it's really incredible when parents, talk to me about their fighting or their war, and my kids don't hear, they're in the other room. And yet we talk to adult children and we learn that they heard the whole time. The kids know.
Oh,
and
yeah.
They don't even, it's not even in the hearing or the noise. They know from the energy of their caregiver, that intimate connection. They know whether you're happy or not.
Yeah.
And they'll do things to create happiness or to create energy to the narrative of the home. I always say, what is the narrative? Your child repeats the narrative. So if there's that energy that's at war and not at peace, then that's what you're going to see. And but I tell them over and over again which way to behave. I said, what is the energy in the way that you tell that? Or what is the energy that you're communicating with your partner? What is that like? Tell me about what your body's like, or what your tone is like. Oh, so recognizing our responsibility to model.
Yeah, but it's got to be really important for children to see healthy, not conflict, but parents working out problems in a healthy way, so that as they grow up, they have tools to say, I can work this out. Like you know what I mean? Like,
yes,
parents will have issues and conflict, but so that they can demonstrate to their children, this is how you work it out in a loving, healthy way.
Constructive way, and recognize that this is what teams do. We win the game. We get there together. And how do we do that? With proper procedures and with families being able to do things step by step. At Familyship, I help them break down the steps. So in mediation, there's processes to help parents negotiate separation agreements, for instance. Whereas Familyship, we negotiate things like who's doing the dishes and who's gonna, do the laundry. So these everyday disputes that can become entrenched into long-term conflict, which can lead to separation and divorce, which often do. Money, role and responsibility distribution, child discipline or child behavior management, in-law relations comes up a lot. What did this conversation look like to build goals, have a good brainstorming session and practice the skill of brainstorming, and then set agreements that make sense?
Yeah.
And
amazing.
Yeah,
it's interesting because even in families in general, just learning the skills, because families are complicated. They know us the best, they challenge us the most, we have history, and being able to be aware of how you think and take a moment and be like, I know that this person loves me, we're gonna step away or something, and just there you go.
That's a great tool right there, Jane. Just recognizing that you have an opportunity to breathe and be responsive and choose to, yes, we might have history, but choose to think forward. So mediation is a forward-thinking, solution-based process. Recognizing when we start talking about the past or we start going into kind of that therapeutic conversation, that's a role for another opportunity for maybe a therapist or whatnot. In Familyship, it's very focused on goals.
Yeah.
And also that responsibility that you were just talking about, being responsible to goals. Yeah.
So can you explain a bit more about Familyship? Like, how would someone, if someone is listening to this and they're like, I really do need help or mediation, it's a website they go to?
Yes, so the best way to contact us is actually through Facebook, the Messenger. That's where most of the clients come, or they phone me, email me, go through the Messenger. And then there's a free half-an-hour consult that I give parents or couples. And then we decide kind of the plan. If it's sometimes it's one partner that comes and they would like to go through mediation, the other partner's not quite ready. Then I might coach the two of them a few sessions and then until we can get to the table. Once we get to the mediation table, it's actually pretty quick. It's about an hour and a half usually, and they come up with an agreement. So it's really just pinpointing those disputes that they're really have been nagging at their everyday life.
Yeah. And so the goal to have them have a healthy relationship so then their kids can see, and it's all, that's incredible. So I'm curious to know how the pandemic is affecting you and how you're seeing it with families. Like, are you doing these on Zoom with families now?
Yes, well, all of FamilyShip ever since day one has been at a platform that the family prefers. So it could be phone, it can be Zoom, it can be Skype, it can be Hangouts, whatever works best and is most comfortable for them. Yeah, and with the pandemic, the choice, the differences I've seen actually is just the explosion into other parts of the world. So I have to be really aware that FamilyShip is for Canada, but I'm getting calls from Africa and Europe, and I'm not sure what's different now. So
because you and I were talking before, and it's so interesting because I had said to Danielle that, this time right now is so stressful on families, and I was feeling like if a family, like I feel really blessed, I have a really good marriage and that my daughters are doing good, and because when you go through a difficult time, you're more chance of coming out of it stronger. This is what I was thinking. And then I feel for families that were already in turmoil. Yeah. I'm like, how is this affecting them? Like it just, and then you were pretty wise on that. You thought a good chance to.
Well, I think it's interesting too, because with FamilyShip, I made a quote, and it is that parenting in isolation is a bittersweet gift of time. Really, parents are given this opportunity that is under all this stress, and it's difficult. And at the same time, I'm getting back that parenting partners, the conflicts they're having more time to sort it out.
Yeah.
Time and stress become such a nemesis when we need to solve a problem, right? There's that, right? So it's really hard to be responsive when we feel like we're busy or we have other things to think about. The pandemic has created opportunity for more space and more involvement in these everyday things. There's more of a requirement almost to work together. And I'm noticing parenting partners be more curious about each other. They're asking more questions. They have more time to communicate and practice communication. And so it's quite fascinating without this bitter busyness that can exasperate daily conflict or disputes. This time is also bringing a certain closeness that I'm witnessing, and I think it's quite beautiful.
It's a really, really interesting time because, and that's the reason I started the Compassion Project was within the first 2 weeks, there were so many things happening in our life that were like, what? These big things that were happening. My husband ended up retiring. He's a pilot with Air Canada. He wasn't ready. My daughter had to cancel her wedding. Kindergarten was canceled. I'm just like, if this is happening to me, what's happening to all these families? And how are they dealing with it? Like, it's kind of blown my mind. And I think, it's not easy. So
it is not easy. It is not easy. It's definitely an unknown territory, isn't it?
And it's definitely a time, like my mom, I had done one of these with my mom, and she said, it's a time to go inward. Like we can't go out as much, so we need to go in. And it's really forcing a lot of people to look deeper at themselves and heal, which I think is good.
I think so too. Your mom is wise. That's what I'm witnessing that so much, this inner responsibility, this reflection and insight and relationships. It's a time for relationships.
It is. I know. So I'd love to hear a bit about that Peace360 Initiatives. Is this new for you? A new venture?
Yes.
I've never heard of it. I'm really curious.
Thank you for asking. I am so excited to be given this opportunity to talk about mental health at a global level. I'm surprised by the opportunity and super grateful that Chris, the founder, believes in me and asked me to take this position. But it is really about the pillars. So mental health, disaster relief, and restorative justice, conflict resolution. Taking those pillars and looking at how they are, what programs are in place or not around the world, what's working, what's not, and how it's almost how a team of citizens, global citizens, can advocate for different areas.
Oh, wow.
So it's really about creating a global team of support in these three pillars. So for my role as a director of mental health, I'm learning and about what's happening at the ground all over the world. So learning about what's happening in Gambia, what's happening in Pakistan, what's it looking like in India, what's happening in all of these countries, and what are they naming right now. It's new, so I'm just really in the stage of understanding to get more of a bigger picture, learning so much about how different we are here, and
Yeah.
going, wow, we sure can learn a lot from the grassroots place in Gambia, who they don't even have the systems we have, yet the compassion building and the support in the community is something that we have a lot of learning to do here. Our hope is over 2 years that we'll be able to create enough support where we look at mental health as trauma, and we have a support system in place where people can call and talk about their trauma. And this is a kind of a global, it's an initiative that we recognize all over the world, that mental health and rights and liberation are connected. That when we are not free, we don't do well. So what is it that's in the way of our rights? Where do we need to be liberated? And having these conversations globally is really beginning to take shape with us, and looking at, wow, okay, it is about our freedoms and our rights. And when we don't have these inherent needs, we do not thrive. And so we can call it anxiety, we can call it depression, we can call it all of these whatever. And in Canada, we do that. Not all over the world, we don't. So it's important to recognize these criteria. What's important to recognize is humans need liberation and freedom in their own right, what it means for them in their community. And to have a global team to support that liberation is powerful. And so our hope is to have a representative from every country build a team of support in their country so they can start defining what liberation, what mental health means to them.
Wow. Okay, so this Peace360 Initiative, how long has this been around?
I'm not sure the founding date, but definitely probably early this year, like January this year, I'm guessing. So we are just brand new. The team, I think we have 20 countries represented now, building on looking more around Europe, South America. We still need a lot more. And the board of directors is finally all in place. The executive board team is all in place. Yeah, it's really been an incredible thing to watch from the inside, and to have the opportunity to communicate with everybody all over the world. And the amount, Jane, the experience of the folks, if you go to YouTube and you watch these videos and you look at their bios and you realize just how much education, skill, knowledge, and passion is stepping up into this initiative, it's mind-blowing.
Wow. Maybe you could put a link after in the comments on one video. Yeah, so because I think it would be fascinating. Actually, I have to admit, I don't know if I actually thought about this until you're talking about it. I was like, I never thought about looking at a different country and their family structure and how the children are doing, and trying to learn from them and take something that's working for them and bringing it to Canada. Because I do think in North America, I mean, there's a lot of struggle and pain, and we have so much, but I think there is a lot of suffering with the kids, because I think you have to turn back to a more simple way of life and more connection in the family. And I think it's a bit definitely disconnected.
It's interesting you said that. I'm learning from even folks in Africa that are talking about, we talk about our freedom here and we feel so privileged, yet they're like, right? They see us overdiagnosed, prescribed with medication. We're not dealing with things here in that view, right? They're like, oh, you just blanket everything over there. Everything's just fine. We're like,
Yeah.
oh, right? So
Yeah.
what we feel like is our privilege is almost our nemesis as well. I'm learning this
I've heard
idea.
that some countries, it's almost like, in a way, feeling sorry for us because we're so far away from the importance of connection and simple gratitude and simple things. Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting that those are the things these grassroots movements are really making a difference at doing, connecting back to relationships. I go back to the thought around our prisons here in Canada, and what is the government actually doing to prevent addiction, trauma, right? We do a lot on the other side with harm reduction and all of those beautiful things. And what are we doing to help these families? In my situation, helping my dad get off the street because I was his daughter, there was nothing I could do. So that's an amazing opportunity that we're missing out on, is helping and supporting people to reconnect with their families. And that's that restorative part about mental health and that pillar, right? What does it look like to have restorative conversations with lost connections? How do we create peace circles for people where they can renew relationships that matter most? These connections and love that has been lost is so healing. And instead, we end up with people in addiction and on the street and in prison and lost. And family members on the other side of that system with no access to that person, no safe access, it feels like.
Yeah, it's crazy. You're doing incredible work. I am so honored you came on, and I really think you're gonna help a lot of people. And so do you have any advice for families struggling, like where to start? Would you suggest going to the family ship, or what would you say?
Of course I would suggest
yeah
and also just your advice, Jane, at the middle of this show, when you said at the time when you feel that stress come on, recognize it, look at the part of the day you're in, try and nail it. It's at this time of day I feel that, and practice that pause that you said. I mean, just, I have the power to do this. I'm stepping back, and what am I giving to this situation? And we could go into blaming and shaming. Instead, draw on a strength of your partner and just step in. And step forward. Yeah, for sure.
One thing I have definitely learned is that, and it's really powerful. It's like, it's for in a relationship, whether it's with a spouse or a sibling or a friend, whatever it is, if you're struggling, it's like, for things to change, you have to change. For things to get better, you have to get better. And I remember listening to that line and not really understanding it. And I remember thinking, I'm good. Like, I don't have to change. I'm a nice person. And I really was almost irritated by that. For things to change, you have to change. But as I did more growth and more learning, all of a sudden, my brain one day was like, oh, for things to change, I have to get stronger in myself. I have to control my thoughts. I have to know who I am, that no one on this earth has the power to make me feel less than, and that people are entitled to do and say and be whatever they want. It's how I react that causes the problem. And there was this moment of I was so like, oh, I just have to change to be stronger and more confident in who I am. And then when someone says something, you can react with love. You don't have to. You can say, and you can think, I'm really sorry that they feel that way, this happened, but it's not affecting me. It's so powerful.
It is such a powerful piece you're talking about, is that responsibility and knowing that we can't change anyone, but we can show up in a way that aligns with who we are in any situation.
Yeah.
Takes practice, though. I can see you some practice. Yeah.
A lot of practice, and then you think you're good, and that's like, oh, okay, I gotta go back to the drawing board.
And that's the part about family.
Practice my gratitude.
I do role plays with parenting partners and spouses, I'll role play with them. That part of that coaching process is, how do you want to show up in this conflict? Let's you and I role play this in a dynamic kind of learning environment. They're able to practice and feel what that would feel like and get that right for themselves before they show up that way. So it's kind of a fun process.
Incredible. Well, Oz, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on. I think, yeah, you're amazing. And we will put links to the Family Ship and the Peace 360 Initiatives or whatever we need in the comments so people can find you. And yeah, thank you.
Jane.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.